Beom Seok had long been a victim of bullying, constantly pushed around by his former friends, Cheon and Anuo. The years of humiliation had built up inside him, until one day, in a moment of pent-up anger, he finally lashed out. He confronted his old bully, hitting him repeatedly and venting all the frustration he'd been carrying for years. His new group of friends, led by Tae, watched in awe, impressed by his sudden display of strength. They saw him in a new light and invited him to join them for a night of partying. Hesitant at first, Beom Seok eventually agreed and ended up paying for all their drinks that night. The next morning, Tae and his friends followed him on social media, symbolizing their inclusion of him into their circle. This simple act prompted Beom Seok to unfollow Cheon and Anuo, marking the first step in distancing himself from his past. For the first time, Beom Seok felt respected and valued. He was no longer the outcast, and the prospect of a new beginning with Tae's group seemed like the escape he had been waiting for. The next day, as he arrived at school late and visibly hungover, Seon tried to confront him about his behavior, but Beom Seok ignored him and walked straight to his new friends. Tae and his group thanked him for covering their expenses the previous night, though Beom Seok had no recollection of it. His unintentional generosity made him even cooler in their eyes. Meanwhile, Seon was growing increasingly concerned about Beom Seok's drastic change. He pulled Beom Seok aside, trying to understand what was happening. Beom Seok, frustrated, opened up about his feelings of being disrespected by Cheon and Anuo, saying he no longer wanted to associate with either of them. He walked away from the conversation, firm in his decision to sever ties with his old friends. Over the following days, Beom Seok grew closer to Tae and his group, even changing his seat in class to sit with them. He felt like he was finally part of something meaningful. One night, Tae took Beom Seok to a club where they unexpectedly ran into Yongbin, a former enemy of their trio. Despite their past, Yongbin was surprisingly open to hanging out with Beom Seok, as they now shared a common resentment toward Seon and Anuo. When Yongbin learned about Beom Seok's father's influential reputation, he and his new group warmly welcomed him, unaware that they were merely using him for his money and connections. Back at school, tensions were rising. Tae and his friends cut the lunch line, drawing the attention of Anuo, who confronted them and forced them to stand in line. Beom Seok refused and challenged Anuo, leading to a brief altercation where Anuo shoved Beom Seok into a table, humiliating him in front of everyone. This humiliation fueled Beom Seok's anger even more. And later that day, he sought out Yongbin and his associate, Weong, an MMA fighter. He hired Weong to attack Anuo, using his father's money to pay for the job. Weong, eager to settle a personal grudge with Anuo from a past match, agreed to the plan. Later, Tae and his group tampered with Anuo's scooter, ensuring he would have an accident. Their hope was to weaken him before the scheduled fight with Weong. The plan succeeded, and Anuo crashed, injuring his leg. Beom Seok felt a sense of satisfaction when he saw Anuo limping the next day, and the two exchanged a brief but intense look. Anuo suspected that Beom Seok was behind the tampered scooter, but the confrontation was yet to come. When Anuo's birthday arrived, Seon and Wai Yi planned a small surprise for him, but it was also the day that Weong was scheduled to confront Anuo in the fight. Beom Seok had other plans. He texted Ai Yi, telling her that he had a birthday present for Anuo and asked her to meet him outside. Trusting Beom Seok, Wai Yi agreed, but soon realized something was off when she saw Yongbin and his gang lurking nearby. Too late, she understood that she had been set up. Back at Anuo's house, Cheon and Anuo anxiously waited for Yi to return. When Wai Yi's phone revealed a text from Beom Seok, Seon's curiosity got the better of him, and he opened the message. Alarmed, He quickly responded, pretending to be Anuo, and turning off the phone to avoid Beom Seok realizing that Anuo was unaware of the situation. Determined to protect his friend, Kion left the house and followed the clues to the warehouse where Beom Seok and his gang were waiting. When Beom Seok saw Kion, he was conflicted. Though he wanted to cancel the plan, Youngbin and the others were eager to exact revenge on Kion for their past encounters. Sion's first priority was to protect Wei Yi, and he dragged her away from the warehouse, telling her to run to safety. But in the chaos, he was caught by the gang and was no match for the MMA fighter, Weiyong. Sion was severely beaten, and Beom Seok, too ashamed to intervene, walked away. The police arrived soon after, finding Sion unconscious. Sion, however, chose not to implicate Beom Seok, claiming the incident was an accident and asking Wei Yi to keep it a secret from Anuo. The next morning, Anuo was worried when neither Tion nor Wei Yi returned. His concern grew as Kion failed to answer his calls. Determined to find out what happened, Anuo confronted Tae and his friends, and after some prodding, learned the truth about the warehouse incident. Enraged, he took them to the school rooftop and beat them up for their role in harming Sion. Later, Anuo visited Sion to check on him, pretending not to know anything about the warehouse incident to avoid making his friend uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Beom Seok's life took a darker turn. His father, furious over his recent behavior, beat him and threatened to send him to a foreign school in the Philippines. This time, however, Beom Seok fought back. For the first time, he stood up to his father and ran away, fleeing in a taxi. The next day, Anuo began searching for Beom Seok and eventually found Youngbin, who revealed that Beom Seok had been missing since the night at the warehouse. Anuo, desperate to confront Beom Seok, received a call from him and rushed to the gym. There, he found Beom Seok surrounded by his new group of friends. It became clear that Beom Seok had not let go of his grudge and had gathered everyone to witness Anuo's defeat. But to Beom Seok's surprise, Anuo started by apologizing. He acknowledged that their rivalry had gone too far and expressed a desire to mend their friendship. Despite the heartfelt apology, Beom Seok remained resolute in his anger and refused to reconcile. With no other choice, Anuo agreed to the challenge and prepared for a one-on-one fight with Weiyong. The fight began, and Weiyong quickly targeted Anuo's injured leg, gaining the upper hand. But Anuo, with his resilience and determination, started to turn the tide of the fight. The crowd cheered as Anuo began landing solid blows on Weiyong. However, just as Anuo was about to take control, someone from the crowd intervened, pulling his leg and causing him to lose focus. This allowed Weiyong to regain the upper hand and knock Anuo to the ground. As Anuo lay defenseless, Beom Seok entered the ring and began kicking his limp body, venting all his anger and frustration. Encouraged by his actions, others joined in, mercilessly stomping and beating Anuo for what seemed like hours. The beating only stopped when Beom Seok's assistant intervened and ordered them to stop. When they checked on Anuo, they realized with horror that he had no pulse. Panicked, they fled the scene, dragging Beom Seok away. The assistant took control of the situation, instructing his gang members to stage the scene to look like Anuo collapsed while working out, framing the incident as an unfortunate accident. An ambulance was called, and Anuo was taken away. The next day, Sion received a call from Wei Yi, urging him to come to the hospital. There, he learned the devastating truth. Anuo was in a coma, not dead. Kion, devastated, broke down in tears. He soon turned his grief into rage and tracked down Youngbin, beating him mercilessly. Determined to avenge his friend, Sion confronted Weiyong. Despite Weiyong's professional fighting skills, Sion's determination and use of the techniques Anuo had taught him allowed him to turn the tide. In the end, Sion incapacitated Weiyong and walked away, victorious. The principal, meanwhile, had been waiting for Beom-seok's father to arrive at the school. When he inquired about the student who was injured, the principal assured him that the incident was merely an accident. Beom-seok's father, relieved, felt reassured. But Xian, still enraged from his fight, stormed into the classroom and used a fire extinguisher to beat up Tae's gang. Chaos erupted as he left them sprawled across the room. Finally, Xian approached Beom-seok, his anger and pain evident. He raised his fist, ready to strike, but in that moment, he hesitated. Despite everything, he still saw Beom-seok as a friend. Unable to hurt him, Xian's frustration overcame him, and he punched a window instead, shattering the glass. The entire school, including Beom-seok's father and the principal, witnessed the dramatic scene unfold in stunned silence. Beom-seok's father, after viewing the video of his son's brutal attack on Anuo, chose not to press charges against Xian, realizing that his own son was responsible for the events. Anuo, though still in a coma, had friends and family who visited him daily, hoping for his recovery. Kyon, however, was forced to transfer schools due to his actions. On his first day at the new school, a bully approached him, trying to pick a fight. Kyon said nothing, simply staring at the bully with a pen in his hand, silently warning him that he was not to be messed with,